Shabbat Shalom. Before we begin, I shall read some Psalms with a prayer, and we shall begin with Psalm 5. Give ear to my words, O Yud-Heh-Vah, consider my meditation. Hearken to the voice of my cry, my King and my power, I will pray to you. My voice you will hear in the morning, O Yud-Heh-Vah, in the morning will I direct my praise to you and will look up. Certainly you are not the El that approves wickedness, neither shall evil people dwell with you. False light bearers shall not stand in your sight. You hate all who practice idle praise, paying homage to them. You shall destroy them that speak lies. Yud-Heh-Vah abhors a bloody and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into your house in the multitude of your loving kindness, and in your fear I will pay homage towards your holy temple. Lead me, O Yud-Heh-Vah, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight before my face, for there is no trustworthiness in their mouth. Their inner part is very wicked. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. Destroy them, O Elohim. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their sins, for they have rebelled against you. But let all those that put their trust in you rejoice. Let them shout for joy, because you defend them. Let them also that love your name be joyful in you. For you, Yud-Heh-Vah, will bless the righteous with favor and surround him as with a shield. Psalm 118, and this time we will read from Nun. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. I have sworn and I will perform it, that I will keep your righteous judgments. I am afflicted very much. Revive me, O Yud-Heh-Vah, according to your word. Accept, I beseech you, the freewill offerings of my mouth, O Yud-Heh-Vah, and teach me your judgments. My soul is continually in my hand, yet do I not forget your law. The wicked have laid a snare for me, yet I erred not from your precepts. Your testimonies have taken as a heritage forever, for they are the rejoicing of my heart. I have inclined my heart to perform your statutes always, even to the end. Hallelujah. Baruch Hashem. We thank you, Abba. We come before you. We thank you for your mercies. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for the provisions that you have made throughout the week, for our goings and our comings and travel arrangements and the vehicles that you provided and the food that you put on our table and the blessings you laid upon us and the rain you sent in the land for our water and the electricity that you provided for our needs and every other need that you met with our clothing, with our food, with our shelter, with our health, and with our prosperity and abundance. I thank you, Abba. I thank you for your mercifulness, for your kindness, your loving kindness that is always with us, as you tell us to keep your testimonies and to never forget your law. Unfortunately, some have just done that. But we here have taken an oath, as it says in your psalm, I have sworn and I will perform it, that I will keep your righteous judgments. And I have sworn and I will perform it, that I will keep your righteous judgments. Baruch Hashem, Abba, Todah Rabbah, that you give us long life, health, you give us opportunities, that you give us prosperity, you give us abundance, you make our paths bigger, we broaden our paths, that we may be blessed tremendously, that wherever we go, we may not only be blessed ourselves, but we may also bless others, and we may also touch others, and those that are ill in our midst, those that perhaps lack understanding and are ill because of the past things, maybe they ate incorrectly, maybe they lived incorrectly, maybe they thought incorrectly, and as a result they acquired illnesses. Abba, you may remove those illnesses, you may heal those people and their precious souls that belong to you. We thank you, Abba. We pray for our nations. We pray for our leaders, that you give them wise judgments and wise choices for the people. We thank you, Baruch Hashem. So, before we get into the Parsha, I wanted to brief you on the current climate and the situation that is present at hand in the U.S. and maybe even around the world. There are local elections going on in the UK, and the Conservative Party is taking a beating, as you can see, and it looks like it's going to be a bloodbath, that they're going to lose a lot of seats because people are just very upset with the Conservative Party in the UK for their performance, which is, let's put it this way, abysmal. Abysmal is, I guess, a lighter word. A lot of people are suffering as a result of the inflation, high prices, very expensive bills, and then everything else that trickles on, like expensive insurances, expensive fuel, and made many people's lives difficult. And as a result of that, people are, put it this way, they are peeled off from the Conservatives and they are voting in droves to Labour. Now, of course, when Labour comes, when the election happens, and whether Labour comes or not, that's another matter to be seen. But of course, Conservatives have been in power for quite a long while now, and their performance is unfortunately not very commendable, to say the least. So that's the goings-on of UK. In America, unfortunately, we have a person at the Fed, Jerome Powell, Mr. Jerome Powell, who unfortunately, due to his lack of understanding, lack of business acumen, has really performed, in my opinion, quite poorly in the US economy in terms of raising rates which should not have been raised to the extent that they have been raised, which have caused a number of banks in the US to crash out, one in, of course, Sweden, and 3 banks over here, and another 2 just recently, like yesterday, day before yesterday, 2 more banks came to the fore which were struggling, or at least known to be struggling. At least one was mentioned by a UK paper, Financial Times, and the bank's going to sue them because the bank said that they are not struggling, that the Financial Times put out a fake report. I think that's the bank based in, I believe it's in Arizona or Phoenix. And so the other bank, Bank Corp, that bank is somewhat struggling and trying to find buyers, and they definitely have difficulties. What happens is raising rates is never an answer. You see, when America raises rates, and then everybody else raises rates as well. I mean, look at UK, look at Europe, look at Australia, Canada, all these countries, New Zealand. I mean, they all follow suit with Jerome Powell. So if Jerome Powell sneezes, they all get the cold. See, that's to me, that is a very ignorant policy by these policy makers to just follow each other and not look at their own economies. In that regard, I would commend Japan, because Japan refused to raise rates. In the new person, the new chairman that came in power, he even refused to raise rates. And they've had these low interest rates for a long time. And Japan's inflation is much, much lower than the inflation at home. That just shows you that raising rates is not the answer to inflation. So one of the key factors that they don't measure to inflation is high oil prices. Oil prices now, slowly pushed back, coming down, and they dropped almost to $68 yesterday to the barrel. And then, of course, Saudi Arabia, the nations that are called the OPEC Plus, they decided to squeeze the oil a couple of weeks ago. They decided to squeeze or produce less oil so that they could push the prices up to keep the gas prices high, so that income is flowing into their countries respectively. And so now that the petrol prices have come down, I think an ideal petrol price, gas price as I call them over here, ideal petrol price would be anywhere between $60 to $70 within that time, within that framework would be a good price. 65, maybe 66, 67, $68. That's not a bad price. That would be a stable petrol price that will help many nations. So raising rates, what it does, it crashes banks. And if you don't believe it, just look at America. How many banks have crashed? And one bank crashed in Europe. So you see that raising rates is not the answer, because what happens, people may wonder, well, how do the banks crash? How is it possible that if the government raises rates, surely they pass the rates on to the people, so they don't pay? And the answer is no and yes. Yes, they pass the rates on to the people, but they themselves have to pay the rates, because when they do interbank funding, they borrow money from one bank to the next, they are inscribed a certain rate. So before, when America had a rate of 0.25%, that's what you would pay, maybe even less than that, at interbank rate, or what's also called the LIBOR. Now, when the rates went up to, as they are presently, 5.25, imagine if you borrowed $100 billion from another bank at, let's say, 2% rate, and now the rate's at 5.25%. So you borrowed at 2%, now you're having to pay back at 5.25, means you have to pay 3.25% as a bank back to the other bank, or thereabouts. So how much impact would that have? It doubles your payment. I mean, for $100 billion loan, this is kind of typical money that banks can they can take loans of such amount, no problem. So if you imagine that banks which interlend, and if you were paying interest on, let's say, call it $2 billion. Let's just call it $1 billion. Let's say you borrowed $1 billion, and you were paying, for argument's sake, let's say you were paying 3% interest on it, on $1 billion, and now you have to pay 5.25%. So, or let's go back even further. Let's say you were paying 0.25%, and suddenly you have to pay 5%. So where does that put your interest rate payment? It means that your interest rate payment multiplied, my goodness, it multiplied about, it's hard to count, 5 times 4, 20. It multiplied 20 times. If your payment as a bank was, let's say if your payment was $100,000 to a loan, and it was at 0.25%, and now it's gone to 5.25, now you're going to have to pay $525,000 payment. So of course the bank's going to crash, because the bank is trying to make money by lending money to several individuals. So in their pot, they will lend that pot to 10 different individuals, and then and if those 10 different individuals, or the depositors, they lend depositors money, and the depositors all come back running saying, we want our money. Banks don't have the liquidity to pay all those depositors, because they've already lent it out to 10 different individuals, the same money. So they do not have that money to give back in the same amount until, of course, they've made their interest payments back, over the years. And of course, everybody doesn't want their money, but then if people panic as a result of the economy or because of fear and greed, then it can lead to banks crashing. So hence why it is never a good idea to raise rates. America could easily, very easily, being a top of the, one of the top nations in the world, we could have easily released, pumped more oil from the ground, and we could have controlled the price of oil. We would have said, hey, oil doesn't need to be selling at $83, $85 a barrel. We could easily pump oil from the ground, and we could bring the price right down to $55, $60 a barrel. Easy, no problem. All that needed to happen, our president, who unfortunately is not very clued up about these things at this moment, or at least his advisors are not advising him correctly, he could have easily said, hey, produce more oil. That would have knocked down that would have produced more supply. Supply and demand means that we have more supply, the prices go down. But the president actually, what he did was the opposite. He shut down some of the oil producing wells, shut down the key pipeline, Canadian pipeline, and that had a huge hit-back effect. And a lot of the times this is due to political motives. This is due to corruption, unfortunately, that happens within internal administration, where people shake hands and they negotiate contracts and they get, paid off, in sweeteners for those contracts. None of those things happen in the boardroom. So my point is this, that because of these inept policies, everybody, starting with America and everybody else down the chain, suffered, because we could have controlled it. We could have said, hey, we produce the oil, so what, and we could have flooded the market with oil. We could have put oil into our reserves. Instead of selling our reserves, we could have filled our reserves, and we would have had so much oil that there's no way that inflation would have risen. We would have no need to raise rates. There are many other techniques to lower the economic prices, which, as I explained, one was for us to produce more oil, and we didn't do that. We have gas and we have oil. We have both. Okay, we have liquid gas as well. We could have produced both of them because we sell to 40 nations, and we would have just said, you know what, no problem. And we would never see inflation in America, and then it will trickle down other countries as well. But unfortunately, our leadership over here, present leadership, which is defunct and about to go out, because we're going to get new government maybe next year and beyond, and it's definitely not going to be the present government. I can tell you that Democrats are out in this government. So next, Republicans are going to come to power. So this is where we are, and the economic cycle, and this is why a lot of people are suffering unnecessarily things which could have been made easier for everybody. So that's that part, and so let's move on to the lecture now. So the lecture is about the Torah Parsha Emor, and very appropriate. But before I get to the Parsha Emor, I wanted to point out that the Psalms that I read, here it said that it says in the Psalm 118, verse 105, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Your word, what is your word? Your word is God's law, God's Torah, the holy words of God. They are a lamp to our feet, means that they light our feet. Lamp, that's what lamp to our feet means, that they light to our path. They light our path. They give us, what does light to my path mean? It means that they give us understanding. They give us good reasoning to make good choices and good decisions. And when he says, I have sworn and I will perform it, it means that when you have taken an oath, you must be serious about it. Don't mess around, and 1 minute you've taken the oath, like happened in, with our ex-rabbis who took the oath and they made it a little thing, and they all of them, except, of course, I commend the London rabbis. One rabbi in London died righteous man, and the other rabbi is a righteous man. And there was one rabbi only in Texas, only one rabbi that died a righteous death, and every other rabbi in Texas that was inaugurated fell short of God's glory. And they all denied their oath, they all broke their oath. So, they did not take the Torah seriously. And unfortunately, what does God say? What does God say? God says, you see here in verse 110, we are told that the wicked have laid a snare for me. Who are the wicked? Well, let me be practical and let me be very honest to you. Who are the wicked? The wicked are not some guys out there wearing turbans, as most of these news media tell you. No, they are not the wicked people. And the wicked people are definitely not ones sitting in churches. They're not the wicked people either. Who are the wicked people? The wicked really here, it's your own mind. It's you. You are the wicked person. If you do not control your mind, if you do not feed your mind with the right information, if you do not train your mind, your mind will pick up anything from the environment. It will pick up anything from the news. It will pick up anything from McDonald's, from Burger King, and it will feed on that, and it will be like a sponge. And some of the information that it will take up will be bad information. And that bad information is a snare for you. And that's what it says. The wicked have laid a snare for you. Who are the wicked? Your mind. Your mind can be a lantern, it can be a lamp, it can be a light to your path, or it can be a wicked piece of equipment that ensnares you. So how do we take care of that? Well, we'll come to that. And so if we then, went back to, we read Psalm 5, which is a great psalm. And if I go to Psalm 5, and I tell you a little bit from there, it says that, give ear to my words, O Yudhewahe, consider my meditation. What meditation? Remember, I gave you meditation, all of you, a 5-minute meditation to lighten up, brighten up your center of your brain, your forehead, we call the third eye chakra. Consider my meditation. When we sit quietly, when we meditate, when we do the meditation necessary, it instills quietness in our minds, instills confidence, instills focus. When we do that, we are then able to correctly, rightly divide the word of God, and we rightly divide the word outside around us, the people, the places, the things. Means that we are not picking up every garbage out there. When we feed our mind the right information, this is why I say to you, do your exercises. And if you don't do your exercises, then you will not profit. You will not benefit. The only way you're going to benefit is if you do your exercises. And if you're going to do your exercises for 1 week, or maybe 3 weeks, and 4 weeks you do your exercises, and then you get tired, then you stop. Well, and then maybe you got what you want. Maybe you had a desire and you got it after 4 weeks. You are happy, and now you stop doing your exercises. Guess what? You would go back to your old state if you're not careful. You would start to traverse back to your old state. So therefore, you got to be careful to do your exercises to stay in the present, successful, prosperous state. Consider my meditation. That's why consider the meditation and do it. And it says in verse 6, you shall destroy them that speak lies. It says, Yudhewahe, God abhors the bloody and deceitful man. Well, who is the deceitful man? Who is the bloody man? Who is the one that tells lies? Your mind. Your mind is the one that tells you lies. It's the one, whatever you're feeding on out there, whether it be news, whether it be reading newspapers, tabloids, whether it's reading fiction, non-fiction, or something else, whether it's watching horror movies, whether it's listening to punk or rock music. Those things are the bloody and deceitful man. That bloody and deceitful man is the one that entraps you and the one that destroys your mind, causing you to destroy yourself. In other words, you are subject to self-destruction because of the manipulative information that you pick up, maybe on the net, maybe off the net, maybe from TV, maybe from papers, because papers are, as you know, half lies. Papers are nothing but gossip. People, I remember in England that when I used to travel to London to the job, a lot of people would read newspapers in the train. Somebody's reading Financial Times, somebody's reading the Sun newspaper, somebody's reading the Star, and the Sun newspaper was well known for page 3, the naked girl on page 3, half naked. So people love to read it, and the Sun newspaper and similar newspapers in the UK all contain gossip, total gossip, half truths and half lies, and total slander. Those newspapers are full of slander, and yet people enjoy reading them. People read them, they read gossip, they love it, and that is the information. That is the bloody and deceitful man. Man here is a metaphor for information that you take into your mind, and you're destroying yourself by that information. Then you wonder, why am I being sabotaged? Why do I have blocks? Why am I not getting my manifestation? Why is my desire not coming? Because you allow the bloody and deceitful man wrong information, negative information, negative media, negative comments, reading about shootings in the streets, in the cities. All those informations, they affect you. They affect you negatively. They don't affect you positively. If you went outside, let's say you went outside and you stood in the sun, you stood before sunset and you watched the sunset, and you'll be a happy man or woman. Or if you got up in the morning and you saw the sunrise, and you'll be like really happy about it. Oh, I seen the sunrise. It's really nice. Or if you saw, for instance, the rainbow, you'll be really happy that you saw the rainbow. And by the way, today was a lunar eclipse, but I think it's over now. It's over around an hour or so ago. So, if you saw those things, you'd be very happy. You'd be like, hey, this is wonderful. This is great. Yeah, I saw the sunrise. Or if you saw the rainbow out there, you'd be very happy to see the rainbow. But what if you unfortunately were passing through some place and you saw a shooting, or you saw people dying, or you saw an accident? You won't be very happy. You'll be shocked, and you will take that, because pictures, especially traumatic pictures, they affect your mind much more than other things. And what happens, because they affect you, they are impregnating you with bad information. And that impregnation can lead to disaster for you. This is why, as much as possible, you must do meditation. You must feed yourself good information. If you feed yourself good information, you will never go wrong. You'll be safe. So, and coming back to the Parsha, it says in chapters 21 of the book of Leviticus, is all to do with the priesthood. And it says, and Yahoshua said to Moshe, speak to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, they shall none be defiled for the dead among his people, but for his kin that is near to him, that is for his mother, and for his father, and for his son, and for his daughter, and for his brother, and for his sister a virgin that is near to him, which has had no husband, for her may he be defiled. So God lays out instructions that what is profane for the priesthood and what isn't, what he's allowed to do and what not to do. These are really particularly geared at and aimed at the priesthood. And so it also gives you instructions on, it's talking about holiness. It talks about the Shabbat, the weekly Sabbath. It talks about the Passover offering on the 14th of Nisan. It talks about the Passover festival, and it also talks about how to count the Emor, and talks about the festival of Shavuot, Pentecost, which, by the way, is coming this month, as you know. Be prepared for it. And it talks about remembering to blow the shofar on the first Tishri, which is Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets. And it talks about different festivals, and it also lighting of the menorah, and then it talks about a man being executed who had committed blasphemy, because and then it talks about because he committed blasphemy against God. It talks about penalties of penalty for murder or injuring one's fellow. So all these things this Parsha speaks about, and we see that one of the phrases that's used in here, it says in chapters 21:3, it says, "And for his virgin sister, who has not married a man, for her he may contaminate himself." Now, by the way, the Zohar, it applies this to God. Okay, this is how it says. It says that the verse that says, "Who is this coming from Edom, of rancid and blooded clothes, from Bozrah?" And it says that all my garments are soiled, I have soiled. In Isaiah 63:1-3, he says Israel is God's virgin sister. So this virgin sister, metaphorically, it says applies to Israel, and she has not married a man, who has resisted all the alien masters she is subject to throughout her exile. For her sake, God contaminates himself to battle for her enemies and to raise her from the dust. So this is what it explains about God and the relationship with Israel, that what it means, and the Zohar concludes on that. And it also says that, it also says that where a priest is mentioned, that he shall not contaminate himself for his father or his mother, it says that is like to contaminate oneself for the sake of a mitzvah, a good mitzvah. It says a dead person who has no one to attend to him is a great mitzvah, because nobody is going to attend to a dead person. So if somebody else attends to a dead person, it could be a great mitzvah. So hence why it kind of implies that. And where it says that I shall be sanctified among the children of Israel, God says that in the book of Leviticus 22:32, that he will be sanctified. And here again, it is not just God will be sanctified, but you as people, the house of Israel, is to also be sanctified for God. And how do we sanctify ourselves? Well, how about keeping the laws and doing them? When you keep the laws and you do them, that sanctifies you. Remember what I just said earlier? If all you do is read the Sun newspaper, I'm not saying that you all do, but I'm just saying that if those that live in UK, all they did was read the Sun newspaper, or those in America that lived here read some newspaper full of gossip and lies, then of course, that's not going to sanctify you, is it? Because you're taking information into your mind, into your brain, that is going to have knock-on effect. It's going to poison you. Let's put it straight. It's going to poison your mind. So what would be better not to poison your mind? Well, let me just say, if all you did right every day, you read one psalm, you did nothing but just read one psalm every day, are you poisoning yourself or are you cleansing yourself? Think about that versus the newspapers that people read. So here it's important to understand that this applies to many different things. This is why I say, when you meditate, when you sit down and you breathe deep and you focus your mind and you clear your mind from all abject thinking, wrong thinking, and you clear yourself, and then perhaps maybe you even just think about your desire, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, thinking about your desire: car, home, job, health, long life, all those things, great job, etc. When you think about your desire, then it's a great thing. You're a happy man, happy woman, because you have a clean mind. You are sanctified, theoretically, if you think about it. Now, remember I gave you the meditation to do, so please do your exercises. Also, I would encourage you to remember this. A lot of, this is not a church where, the pastor is telling you, hey, you got to pick up your cross and walk after Christ and be like Him and suffer and humiliate yourself and be kicked and spat at and thrown on the ground, then you're holy. No, 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 and no, and no. Listen, I'm a Kohen, okay? I'm a priest of the Most High God. So, as a Kohen, my job is to guide you into the aspects of Torah, aspects of life, to prosper, to eliminate problems in your life, to prosper you, to bring abundance into your life. How many rabbis do you know, or teachers do you know, that want you to become millionaires, want you to become rich, want you to become prosperous? Think about it for a second. My job is, I want you to prosper. I want you to be blessed. I want you to be abundant. I want you to have nice homes, nice cars. Why? Because it shows the blessings of the King upon you. The King of the universe. It's His blessings that will reveal unto you. If you live in a nice house, you have a nice car, you have a nice family. What does it mean? It means that the King of this world has blessed you. The King of the universe has blessed you. It is by His hand. You as His subject, you as His child are blessed. That is where I stand. My job is to bring you to those blessings, is to make sure you have the blessings, is to be aware of the death traps in this world. And the people who have left us in the past have followed those death traps. If you follow the death traps, where will it lead you? It will lead you to death. It will not lead you to life. Hence why it is important that you follow the good. You listen to me, you do the exercises, you bless yourself, you have prosperity in your lives, and it will be absolutely wonderful. I take pride in speaking to my students privately and closely and guiding them so that they can do things that will bless them. And when they are blessed, it makes me happy that I'm doing a commendable job for my students, and that they have blessings in their life, they have happy families, and they have happy lives. No illnesses, no problems, no issues, and any little wrinkles, we can resolve those. But in order to resolve those, there's a back and forth. You have to talk to your Kohen, and the Kohen then can guide you. We can't live in isolation. We can't be like, hey, I'm over there in Alaska and I haven't got time to speak to you. Sorry, Kohen, I can't speak to you because I'm in Alaska and we have a daylight and nightlight issue. We can't live like that. In order for you to prosper, you need to communicate with me. You have email, okay? There's phone, but maybe you can't phone. That's okay. But you have email. There are several other mediums. So there's mediums, there's WhatsApp, there's Telegram, there's other things going on. So you can use those to communicate with me. You don't have to communicate by phone all the time. You communicate with that, and any problems you have, any issues you have, anything you're not sure of, anything that you are trying to manifest, bring into your life, be happy with your families. I'm here to guide you, help you, and bring you to that. And my total existence here is to help you, the house of Israel, those of you that call yourself the house of Israel, those of you that belong to the Torah, is to help you, to prosper you, so that your families will look at you and say, hey, look at that man, look at that woman, how come she's so prosperous? How come that man's so prosperous? Why? Because you follow the Torah. You follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you are prosperous because you obey the laws. That's why you're prosperous, and rightfully so. That is my job. I want to do that. I want to help you in that department. But I can only help you if you come to me and you bring your issues and you tell me, and then I can assist you in return, guiding you what to do. If you live out there in some third country, or if you live in the UK, or if you live in France and you never talk to me, then how am I going to assist you? This is how people this is how students who are with me are no longer communicating with me. Then they slowly they lose touch. They lose touch, and as not just losing touch, is the corruption of the world that gets to them. They become self-destroying machines. Yeah, they self-destruct, unfortunately. You know why they self-destruct? Because they follow the wrong precepts in the world. Because they follow the wrong precepts in the world, the next result is that they lose out on God, they lose out on self, they lose out on family. First is God, and the only thing that stands between you and God is myself, the Kohen. Then you lose God, you lose me, you lose. Next comes your family, you lose your family. Then comes your prosperous life, you lose your prosperous life. Then what's left? You're right on the ground. Why? Because you self-destructed. Means what? It means exactly as I read in the Psalm. Because of that deceitful man. Who is the deceitful man? It's not some man sitting in a mosque. He's not deceitful. It's not some woman sitting in a church. She's not deceitful. It is your mind that is picking up garbage, negative information, false lies. Those things is absorbing and is calling it its own, and is replicating it. When people have problem in their marriages and they keep losing their marriages, it's a cycle. They have one marriage and they lose that marriage, then they go to find another wife and they lose that marriage, then another one, then another one. The cycle continues. Where do you stop the cycle? It's a cycle, it's a pattern. It's an issue that is right in your mind. In order to resolve that, I have to fix your mind in order to resolve that. In order to resolve an illness, I know somebody in the East, that person is maybe not even 40 years old, and suddenly he's got diabetes, he's got hernia or had hernia, and I don't know, other problems. So he had an operation for the hernia and taking medication for the diabetes now, and maybe even have a bout of blood pressure. Why? Why suddenly a young man, 30 or 39, 40 years old, suddenly he has all these problems? Why? Is because of how he thinks. It's because how he lives. Because what he does and what his mind does every day. See, somebody like me can guide you, can help you, so that you're not into that situation. You're not the person who's going to get diabetes, blood pressure, and heart attack. That's if you come to me and listen to me. If you don't listen to me, you don't come to me, I can't help you. And if you think that by, giving to God, tithing to God, giving sadaqah, charitable offerings, you think that's a problem and a burdensome, then you're mistaken. I'm afraid, sir, that if you think like that, you will never prosper. Because what you're getting right now is not your right. Don't think that, because I go and do a 40-hour job, it's my right to have a pay. No, it's the blessing of God. That pay, that salary, that remuneration package that you get is a direct blessing of God. And so you should always be thankful to God for that. Wherever your money, your salary comes from, your income comes from, you should be grateful to God for that. But if you're going to be like, hey, I'm not going to give tithe, I'm not going to give zadaqah, why should I this and why should I should save it? Then guess what? You're on the very fast road to nowhere. You're on the very fast road to homelessness. If you want to remove homelessness, you want to remove yourself on the road to nowhere, start tithing, start giving charitable offerings, zadaqah, sending it into the Kohen. Yes, that's where your prosperity is. That's where your blessings are. Because when that money comes in, God circulates it, God multiplies it, and God sends it back to you, multiplied. Would you want money multiplied back to you, or do you want money negatively back to you, like, negated from you? Think about that for a second. I have seen so many of people who came to me and they ended up with nothing because they refused to tithe. They refused to give sadaqah. But those people, I will now give you testimony of those people that diligently tithe. Today, they are on the top of the chain. They never suffered. They never had prosperity issues. They never had health issues. They never had problems in their life. Yeah, they had little things going on with families. Maybe some families are Christian and some are not, and others are believing other things. But they never had problems. They never went through major issues. So, if a student of mine loses a job, God's going to bless him with another job. He's going to get maybe a better job. It's a way to blessing. It's never a means. It's never, what's going to happen next? No, such a person will never have to question God. God will bring him to a place where God will bless him. And the only way God can bless you into a new job, new salary, because you might not leave your old job. You might be like, hey, I'm okay, I feel comfortable. People get comfort from staying in one place. But then God removes you from your comfort zone and gives you something different, something better, and He improves your salary. And the only way God can do that is by removing you. So losing a job is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing, because it means that God's going to bring renewal into your life. One of my students asked me, he said, I see 2 frogs every night at my door. What does that mean? I said, frogs? Frogs is a great sign. Frogs are the creatures that came to our assistance when God was about to send the plagues and destroy Pharaoh's homeland. God used frogs. Frogs came in, and they were in the pots and everywhere, and they was self-sacrificing. Frogs were committing suicide. They committed suicide. They burned. They self-sacrificed. So frogs are a sign unto renewal. It was through the 10 plagues that God took Israel out and gave them new life, renewal, blessings, prosperity. All of that thing only came when we left Egypt. Before we leave Egypt, before we left Egypt, our people were slaves. But when they left Egypt, what did they leave with? Gold, silver, and all those plagues, which was one part of the plague was the frogs. So seeing a frog is a great sign. Don't ever kill a frog. Don't ever drive a frog from your home. Leave them where they are. They are a sign that it reminds us that we were once in Egypt, and God used the frogs for our help. And the frog is a sign of renewal, of a new beginning, of prosperity coming in your life, blessings coming in your life. So if you see that, it's absolutely wonderful. It's absolutely great. So therefore, I would encourage you that what I have said, pay attention, pay heed. Pay heed to what I said. Listen and learn. Don't self-sabotage. Don't allow that bloody, deceitful man to tell you lies, to destroy your life. That is within, by the way. It's not without, it's within. So what you do with the information without, and that's what affects you and changes you and molds you, and either can make you a great person. If it's bad information, it's never going to make you a great person. So right information is the path to enlightenment. Baruch Hashem. Have a wonderful Shabbat, wonderful week ahead. I wish you a happy Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom, Shalom, Shalom.